I'm a hang glider pilot, and I'm making this video because I had a very dangerous event recently. One of the most dangerous you can have as a hang gliding pilot, and it was my fault. I broke several rules that keep us safe in hang gliding, and I want to share with the flying community what happened, why it happened, so that hopefully others can learn by my mistake and not have it happen to them. What I did is I launched my hang glider from a launch with a steep grade below the launch, um, and I didn't hook in my hang glider. This carabiner attached to the harness. I'm in the harness, and the thing you always want to do before you even go onto the launch is to hook this into the hang loops, which are right here uh, on the glider. So this is what I didn't do. That. Okay. Uh, why did this happen? There are a number of contributing factors, but let me explain what happened when I launched. So I'm on the top of launch. I had a good cycle coming in. Air was coming up the hill nice and smoothly, right into my face. And I launched. By the fourth step, I realized that the glider was going up and flying. I was not. And I quickly realized, oh my God, I didn't hook in. I'm in trouble. So my thought reaction was good. I just pushed the glider away from me, and then I tumbled down the hill. Fortunately, it was a grassy slope without rocks and no big trees. So I think I tumbled a couple times, and I stopped, and I then watched my glider fly out, kind of like a paper airplane back and forth, and it sort of turned around and did a fly-on-the-wall landing at the bottom of the launch slope. And so even the glider had almost no damage. Just one batten was slightly bent, which was easy to fix. I broke my little finger. That was it, and banged my knees a little bit. So I'm extremely lucky, and thank you. So what was the situation? I had this is a new glider for me. It's a Sport 3 from Will's Wing. I took delivery of it about a month and a half ago at Lookout Mountain, Tennessee. I flew it about 10 times down there, and I brought it back to New England with me, and I've flown it a few times here. My landings have been pretty good, but it is a new glider, and I felt that it would help me to go to the training hills and do a number of landings to just work on sensing the flare window and getting a good flare. And that's why I went there. I went to Morningside Flight Park, and I went to what we call the 250. I'm going to put up a picture of that shortly for you. But the 250, it's a nice grassy launch. It's one of the smoother, easier launches I've ever been on. That's where I did most of my training. I've launched that hill probably dozens of times. And today was the day that I had the accident. Was really almost a perfect day for doing what I wanted to do. It was light variable conditions. By 10 o'clock in the morning, the hill was heating up, and the LZ was heating up, so the air was starting to move nicely straight up the hill, easy to launch into. One other pilot was there with me doing the same thing, and we were taking turns driving each other up to the launch in the pickup truck. And the setup at Morningside, they have the pickup truck set up so you don't have to break down your glider after each flight. You can land, put it on the back of the pickup truck, drive back to the launch, and then launch again without taking the glider apart. So my first mistake, my first mental error in this whole thing was going to a place with a real program and agenda in mind. I'm going to go there. I'm going to do 4, 5, 6, launches on this bunny hill, and that's what I'm going to do today. I got there. The conditions were good, so that reinforced my desire and my fixation on doing that. By the way, it's a bunny hill, but it is 250 feet high, which is like 25 stories. So I'm kind of flying off a 25-story building, if you will. So I was focused on my landings, and I wasn't thinking about launches, number one. So number two, and that breaks a rule, which is, it breaks my own rule, and I think it should be everybody's rule, that every launch you're taking, when you're about to take that launch, it's the most important launch of your life, because you can die on every launch. If you make some kind of mistake, no matter where you've been, no matter how good the conditions are, no matter how many times you've flown it, you can die on every launch. So each one is the most important in your life. And I let that thought slip out of my mind. I wasn't focused. Secondly, as I said, this is where I trained. I've done dozens of flights on this hill. The conditions were perfect. So I became extremely complacent and overconfident. For me, that day, launching is not going to be a problem. I don't even have to worry about it. Okay? And that's another terrible error that I made. Third error that I made is I didn't focus on the fact that I have not launched anywhere in several years that I can think of, or at least a year, where I didn't have to set up my glider when I got to launch. On these flights, like I said, we bring it up in the pickup truck. It's all set up. You take it off the pickup truck, you put it on the ground, and then you hook in, do a hang check, go to launch, and when the conditions are right, you launch. In my mind, since every place that I've been flying of late, and most of the places I fly, you always have to set up the glider up at launch. So that is a process and a step-by-step process that I'm so used to taking. And by the time I pick up my glider in the normal situation, like I'm at West Rutland or any of these other sites, by the time I pick up the glider, I'm hooked in. So what happened on that day when I had the accident is I get dropped off at the top by my friend, and he drove back down. So the fourth thing, I guess, is I was launching alone. I almost never launch alone. I'm almost always with people and other people who are looking at me, people who help me do a hang check and so forth. But that day I was alone. So that's the fourth thing that was different. And a key rule in hang gliding is, if things are different, you're in danger. Your procedure, your process can get broken. So this is what happened. I got to the launch, took the glider off with the help of my friend, and put it on the ground. And as soon as I got to launch, I started looking at the conditions, because the telltales are right there. And they looked good. They were streaming, lightly straight up the hill. And I said to myself, oh, that looks like a good launch window right now. So I said to myself, well, I'm going to go over there and see. So I picked the glider up. Now, in every other place where I launch, when I pick up my glider, I'm hooked in. Today I wasn't. I get to the launch, right on top where the streamers are, and I'm looking down the hill, and I'm feeling that air coming right up in my face. I look at the telltales again. They're still floating beautifully up the hill for a launch. So I said, well, this is the cycle. I'm going to take it. And off I went, and you know what happened. So I guess the lessons are, never become complacent about launching. It's always dangerous, and you always have to be focused. Number two, generally don't launch when there's not other people around. It's just a bad idea. If something goes wrong and you crash into the trees, or you don't hook in like I did, there'll be no one there to retrieve you. And secondly, that person would have caught the huge mistake that I made. Thirdly, just because you've flown a site many times and you feel that it's an easy launch, don't become overconfident. That's the worst thing that can happen. And I paid the price. So I've done a couple of things to make sure that I never launch without hooking again, and I wanted to go over with you what those are. So I'm going to show you here on my glider. One of the key things I did is I created a checklist which hangs down from the nose of my glider. It's a launch checklist. And I'll put pictures of this in the video. It hangs down from my nose. After I hook in, I look at it and I read it. It's done in large type, so I don't need my glasses. I go down each one and I make sure that I've completed that step. then it's small enough that I can, and I have some Velcro on it, that I can tuck it up under my nose cone and attach it to the Velcro under there, and then have it be completely hidden by the nose cone, and I'm still completely aerodynamic. This is not my idea. I got it from another guy who had a hook-in problem also, although in his case it was the buckles in his cocoon harness. But it was his idea. So I took that idea, I did it, I've flown with it, and I'm really happy with it. Second thing I did is I created a form of an interlock system. This is my hang strap here. When I put my glider away, I have this red Velcro wrap that I put around the hang strap, and it's kind of like a reminder. So, and here's what I do. When I hook in, I take the strap off. I take the red strap off. All right, I have two of them linked together. I'll explain why I do that later. But I take one of them, and I immediately wrap it around my base tube, like this. And if you'll notice, it's right next to the cleat for my VG. So my VG would be, if the ladder was set up, would be coming through here and hanging down. Now I don't want to trip on that when I launch, so what I do is I coil that up and I stick it under this loop. So the loop serves the purpose of holding that. But its main important service, it says hooked in right there, or it says hook in, but the main idea is that if I've hooked in, which means I've taken this loop, this red loop off the hang strap and put it around here, it's basically a sign to me that I have hooked in. So one of the things I do, the last thing I do before I launch now, is I look at my base tube and I look to see if this red Velcro strip is there. If it is, it's one more confirmation that I am hooked in. If I ever were to be there on launch, getting ready to launch, and this wasn't there, and I look and go, oh, it's not there, oh my God, I must not have launched in because it's still up on the hang strap. You know, it's not foolproof, but I've done it once, and I feel like it definitely is basically improving my chances dramatically to not launch unhooked. The reason I have two of these is that when I launch, one is enough when I do a mountain launch or a hill launch, because I launch on 0 VG. And so there's only a little bit of the line coming through here that has to be put under the red Velcro. And there's enough slack in it to do that. But there isn't enough slack if I'm at half VG. And I launch from when I'm towing, I launch at half VG. So when I'm going to tow, I just link these two together and put it around the strap, and I have much more slack, and I can put more line under it. So those are the things that I've done to protect myself in the future. I hope that if one person avoids the mistake that I made by launching not hooked in, it'll be great. Because the reality is that I think the mortality rate for people who launch when they're not hooked in is probably, I don't know, 75% or higher. It's just the split-second decision that I made when I realized I wasn't hooked in. The right decision that I made was to get rid of the glider and just tumble down the hill. If I had grabbed the base tube and let the gliders fly me off the hill and very quickly get me up to an altitude of probably 200 feet, hanging from the base tube with very little control over the glider, and with my weight position putting it into a fairly fast dive, the end result would have been terrible, and I might not be here today. So thanks for watching, and fly safe.